Sorry, Tracy. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I just want to say welcome to all our customers and partners to our virtual HCM localization event. It's good to be back with you. Unfortunately, it's virtual, so I can't see you, and it's not a face-to-face. This one is going to be a voice-to-voice. Unfortunately, under the circumstances, we trust that you have all been well and have been keeping safe during the COVID lockdown. I'm going to briefly introduce our presenters on the program for today. So Tracy Keane from AFSUC, she's just welcomed you, and Tracy will be double hatting for this event. Tracy is joining our localization team to coordinate the Q&A on the chat. We have with us presenting Khabri Kombrung, Senior Manager from EY, our tax advisors. I'm sure you all know Khabri by now. Khabri will present the COVID-19 tax relief updates. Next, we have our team from Bangalore, India. We have Tarun Mishra, our product owner, Pratik Bonshli, Anurag Mohapatra, Kavya Pasala, all who are senior software engineers, and they will be addressing the various SAP system changes and the SAP notes. The team from Bangalore is headed by Neetu Chandrababu from Bangalore, who is our product engineering lead and our area product owner. I am sure she's on the call joining us today. So given that this is our first virtual localization event, we ask that you please be patient with us should we experience any technical issues. If I do fall out, I will join back on ASAP, so it might take a minute or two. We would like you to just please sit back, relax, and enjoy and participate. You can post your questions on the team chat. As Tracy said, she will be coordinating the chat. We will not take any questions in the course of the presentations. We will do it during the actual Q&A session itself. Okay, and yeah, just so that you have a quick, brief idea, so it'll be myself doing your localization roadmap. And then Khabri will do the legal updates, and then we'll have a Q&A session where we will address your chats on the chat group. We'll have a short break of 15 or 10 minutes. We can discuss whether you want it to be shorter than 15. And then we will wrap up with the localization team from Bangalore, who will take you through all the SAP payroll changes. We'll have another session of Q&A, and then we'll wrap up the event. So just given the uncertainty and unpredictability that we have all been experiencing, I wanted to share with you an interesting tool based on a framework by David Snowden. And you might find this very interesting in your role as leaders, managers, decision makers, and in your personal life. It certainly helped me cope with the uncertainty surrounding the legal changes during the COVID-19 lockdown and the disaster management tax relief bill. So I'm going to share this with you for 4 minutes. Please enjoy it.
So over time, leaders develop patterns and habits in the way we approach things. And often those patterns and habits have worked really well for us in the past. And the problem with them is that we get so used to them that we can forget what the situation calls for and just rely on our own habits. And that's why Dave Snowden's Cynefin framework is really helpful, both for us to use to think about ourselves and to use to think about how do we address things with teams. Snowden's framework makes the big distinction between those things which are predictable and those things which are unpredictable. In the predictable world, you can expect things to repeat time after time. They just cycle around. In the unpredictable world, though, things are really different. They don't necessarily happen again in the way they've happened before. He further then separates the predictable world into two different categories. The things that are obvious are those things that everybody agrees. The connection between cause and effect is so tight, it's so apparent, it's so clear that there's best practice around that stuff. It's well researched. So those are the things like, say, there's a recipe for it almost. Like you bake a cake one time, you know how it's going to come out. You bake it again, it's going to come out the same way if you use the same ingredients and the same recipe. And in the obvious space, you should be able to get things that repeat predictably time after time using best practices and recipes, checklists, things like that. In the complicated space, which is the other domain Snowden talks about in the predictable world, in the complicated space, it's different. There is a connection between cause and effect, but it's kind of fuzzy, and you need experts to figure it out. So things repeat over time, but you need a lot of experience or domain expertise to know which approach to take. This isn't the place where we'd have best practice, because experts might disagree about these things. This is the place we'd have good practice, where solid experts with really good research or experience would say, I think you should go this way. Another expert might say, I think you should go this other way. But in general, they're going in the same direction. Things like really hard things that have lots of moving parts can be in this category. Things like bringing a person to the moon, making a rocket ship go to the moon. That lives in this domain, in fact. So you get engineers and scientists and people in charge of rockets and fuel, and all those folks each work together on their own piece. You put it together and you have a machine that will take you someplace wonderful. When you cross over into the unpredictable domain, actually the rules all change, and how we act as leaders also needs to change. Over here, you can't tell what's going to happen next simply because it's happened before. You need to come up with new approaches, novel approaches, safe-to-fail experiments to figure out how to nudge the system in a new direction. People say parenting isn't rocket science, but actually rocket science is in the complicated domain. Parenting is in the complex domain. Leading people is in the complex domain. Culture change is in the complex domain. These are things that just because they happened one way once, you can't count on them happening that way again. Then Snowden offers us the chaotic domain. And in chaos, there's no connection between cause and effect. We just can't make out the patterns. There, a leader's job is to stabilize the system and see if over time patterns can emerge. We experiment our way, safe-to-fail experiments in the complex space, And then eventually some things will become predictable and repeatable over time. You can move them across the Cynefin map into the complicated space, and then maybe even some of those things become obvious over time. And in that way, as leaders use the whole of the Cynefin map, they can fit their style and their problem-solving approach to the actual conditions at hand instead of relying on our habits, which might take us really well in one area and not so well in another area. Patterns and worked really well for us in the past can forget what the situation.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I was just playing that for you to contextualize the current situation we find ourselves in, and certainly it's helped me cope with some of the uncertainty around the legal changes, where the legal changes are pretty unpredictable, changing from revision to revision. And I hope that in your personal lives and your role in the organization, it might just contextualize things. So yeah, this is an interesting saying by Winston Churchill. I'm not sure that he's alleged to have said this: never let a good crisis go to waste. And we thought we'll take this crisis as an opportunity to also, it's a good time to learn. And this virtual event is for us to perhaps look at this as an ongoing collaboration forum. So there's something to be learned out of this experience. So the HCM localization roadmap for 2020, and like I said, with the context of uncertainty, the roadmap is not predictable. You kind of have to wait for the roadmap to emerge. We thought this year, Q1, Q2 was going to have 0 legal changes besides your budget speech. But as it happens, the page is quite full with legal changes. So I'm going to very briefly mention them to you, and they'll be detailed by Gabri and also by the development team. So for Q1, we have delivered the budget speech. We've delivered the foreign employment income tax exemption. We've delivered the SARS changes in the official rate of tax, the official rate of interest, which was on the 1st of February 2020. We've delivered the ETI Employment Tax Incentive Act regarding the national minimum wage. We've delivered the standby/shift allowance, which was included in the Section 7B variable pay remuneration. We have delivered the SARS BRS PAYE employer reconciliation. And here again, I may add that this was the first version. This document is still under construction, so you will receive a second and hopefully not a third. We will wait until this is locked down before we release the next note for the BRS changes. We've delivered the EEA4 income differentials form changes for 2019. We've delivered change in the COID threshold effective 1st March 2020. So those were the legal changes for Q1 2020. Together with that, we've delivered some enhancements. There was an announcement to delete a wage type in the CRT, which might be useful to consultants. It's additional functionality. We've also delivered the reporting framework, which did exist, but we've enabled it for our South African customers. And this is an excellent framework that we thought would be very useful when you are preparing your report for the temporary relief scheme for the UIF submission. With regard to the Q2 2020 changes, the legal changes that we have delivered, and as I said, this was a moving target, the area of complexity, unpredictability, where the ETI expansion and extension was delivered with the first draft bill. And we anticipated that this is not going to change. It was pretty clear to understand and interpret. And we did communicate with the payroll authors group, with our tax advisors and whoever we could, just to understand that, we felt safe to release a note, and we did release a note, but subsequently this has changed. We've got currently a second revised draft bill, which Gabri will take you through. And we have released a note, and we're holding on with the second note. We will release that when the legislation is definitely locked down. The donations to the Solidarity Fund was released as well. And again, one had to think differently and take a position, because this is also in a draft bill, but it was necessary and urgent that we do release this note, and one had to think differently given the circumstances. The temporary relief scheme allowance, it's an allowance that we created a wage type, a model wage type 4, to address a new SARS code in the BRS. And this temporary allowance is not to address the UIF payments to the employee, it's to address the relief scheme or the relief trust, where you will then report this on the IRP5, which is taxable on assessment. The payments coming from the UIF is not taxable on assessment, or is not taxable, and you would then use the non-taxable wage type for the purposes of paying the relief, TERS relief fund from the UIF scheme. We've introduced, we've also added the 3 new UIF statuses for the Department of Labor: the reduced work time, the commissioning parental, and the parental leave. The team will take you through the SAP changes for that. If you have any questions on these, please post them on the chat. We've enabled them through 2 methods. You could use purely through the leave management system, or you could do it through the actions. Again, in Q2, we had another SARS official rate of interest change on the effective 1st April 2020, and that was delivered. So the legal change that we're currently working on is the ETI expansion and extension. It's the second revised draft disaster management tax relief bill. We also, sorry, this should have actually been under the plan changes. The change to the national minimum wage is also in plan to be delivered shortly. And even there is a change to the national minimum wage, typically impacting your ETI solution and employers who are using our ETI functionality. Yes, the plan changes is the ETI expansion as well as the national minimum wage. And that just covers your Q1 and Q2. It's been a tall order. Just very briefly on the new UIF codes, we've introduced the reduced working time, which is a code 17, the commissioning parental, which is 18, and the parental, which is 19. These codes, we've been authorized to go ahead and apply these changes, although they have not yet been published in the EO3 specification. The reduced working time happens to be a functionality that is being used for the purposes of the UI19 and for the purposes of the UIS TERS submissions. So yeah, that is all from me. I'm going to hold with questions until Khabri has completed his presentation, because perhaps whatever you may have to ask me, he might cover it by default. So I'm going to hand over to Khabri, and I'm going to go on to mute. Khabri, will you please take over?
Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to today deal with all the tax relief updates that happened since the start of the lockdown in March. So I think you can all appreciate that Vasi and the team was quite busy during the last months or so. SARS has issued various media releases and explanatory memorandums and draft bills, which I'm briefly going to discuss now. So, and in between, she also received a lot of queries from clients where they want to know how to treat certain things that's not the normal. So if we look at the agenda for today, you can go to the next slide, Vasi. So I'm going to deal with the background and just to illustrate all the changes that happened since the 26th of March. And then I'm going into more detail on the employment tax incentive, the donations to the Solidarity Fund, and the changes that's in the payroll. the skills development levy holiday, the amounts paid by the COVID-19 relief organizations, and the changes to the latest BRS. Then, as Evasi mentioned, that is currently under construction. They issued a version 3, and that's going to be changed now. So the first draft bill was issued on the 1st of April. So in that, the draft disaster management tax relief bill and the tax relief administration bill, the first changes that were introduced was to the enhanced ETI, where they increase the ETI with a maximum of 500 Rand. And also to include other employees. So basically, normally the ETI is only applicable to or can be claimed in respect of employees 18 to 29. But now they included all employees who's earning below the 6,500 Rand limit. And another change on the ETI was that employers who were in refund positions would receive the refunds in respect of the ETI on a monthly basis and not 6 monthly as is currently the case. And then they've also introduced the concept of the COVID-19 Disaster Relief Trust, where they said that any donations made to, or the COVID-19 Relief Trust is deemed to be a public benefit organization. So any donations made by the trust or to the trust would not be subject to donations tax. And these trusts were set up to assist small and medium enterprises during this time, and where any payments were made to employees of a SMME during this period too, the SMME's employees are not subject to employees tax, although it may be taxable on assessment. And further relief that was introduced was the deferral of employees tax. So where a small business with a turnover of less than 50 million could defer 20% of the total employees tax liability during the months April to July. And then the amounts are only payable in 6 installments after or from the August period until I think January. So the last payment would be due in February only. Okay, so that was the first round of amendments which were introduced. And then in May, on the 1st of May 2020, they've issued the draft revised bills. And in those bills, they've further enhanced ETI to a maximum of 750 Rand per qualifying employee. And then they've also included employees which were employed before 1 October 2013, because normally the ETI is only available for employees employed after 1 October 2013. But they've introduced the definition of a eligible employee or qualifying employee, but it didn't make much sense. Although we knew what they tried to achieve, it wasn't clear from the definition. So that was done at that point. And then they've also changed the definition of monthly remuneration, and I'll go into that a bit later. And that is effective from 1 May 2020. So just bear that in mind. And then they've also introduced the definition of the Solidarity Fund in the legislation to cover for the donations made by employees. And they've changed COVID-19 Disaster Relief Trust to a disaster relief organization to include companies as well, companies and other entities. They've increased, if you can just go back, Vasi. They've increased the deduction for donations to the Solidarity Fund in that specific bill, and also introduced a tax holiday for STL for the 4-month period. And where previously the deferral for small and medium enterprises were 20% for the 4-month periods, they've increased that to 35% and increased the turnover level to 100 million rand per annum, which covered more employers during that period. And they've also introduced the additional deduction in the payroll, which the employer can allow for any donations made by its employees to the Solidarity Fund. And that was in respect of donations made prior to 31 July 2020, but we'll go into more detail a bit later on that. So on, when was the 19th? On Tuesday, they've issued the first revised or the second revised bill. You can just move on, Avasi. So this bill had to be issued as soon as possible to for employers to allow to do the changes in the payroll for May. Basically, what in that bill, they've changed the calculation of the ETI for employees whose earning be less than 2,000 Rand per month. And they've clarified the issue on the employees, the qualifying employees for this 4-month period from April to July, which I didn't do previously, where I said that it was a bit of confusion around who exactly they wanted to include. And they further allowed the donations made by individuals to extend it to donations until 30 September 2020, where it was previously only up to 31 July 2020. So going forward, they've mentioned that they're going to issue a third draft revised bill by the end of May, where they will then take into account all submissions made by stakeholders on the bill issued on 1 May 2020. So we may expect further changes. And the final bill will only be tabled to Parliament later this year, so for enactment. So all these things are implemented in the payroll without being enacted. Okay, so then I'm just going to go into more detail on the ETI. So for the period 1 May to 31 July, so that's only for the 3-month period, they've changed the definition of monthly remuneration. So generally, if an employee works for less than 160 hours in a month, the remuneration received during that period is then grossed up to an amount which would have been paid if the employee worked for 160 hours. So for these 3 months, that's no longer a requirement. So say an employee normally receives 10,000 Rand a month, the employee won't be able to claim ETI in respect of that employee because he's over the threshold of 6,500 Rand. But say the employee only works for half the month due to the reduced hours during the lockdown, and the employee's remuneration is 5,000 Rand. In that case, the employee would qualify for, or the employee would be able to claim the ETI in respect of that employee. So there may, a lot of new employees who may not previously would have qualified can now qualify as a qualifying employee due to reduced hours. But that's only for the 3 months period, 1 May to 31 July. We can go to the next slide, Devasi. Okay.
So, sorry guys, may I ask a question regarding this?
Yes. Johan, do you mind if we park the question until
No
the
problem.
end of?
No
Is it
problem,
fine? Yeah.
sorry.
Okay. Thanks, Johan. Okay, so basically in the 2000 or the 19 May draft bill, they've split the qualifying employees into 3 different categories or classes. So I call them now the A, B, or C class or category employees. So the first class is employees who previously qualified for the ETI, and those are the ones not less than 18 years and not more than 29 years and employed after 1 October. So the second class of employee is the same age categories, but employees who were employed before 1 October 2013. So the employer was never able to claim the ETI in respect of those employees. And then the third category is all the other employees aged 30 to 65, for which the employer would never have been able to claim an ETI. So they all are now included in this, or the employee is entitled to claim the ETI in respect of these employees for this 4-month period. So if you look at the calculation on the next slide. So, and this calculation has also been recently changed. So at first, they've introduced an additional 500 Rand, as I've explained previously. So the formula said, so the employees in the first 12 months of employment, the formula read, so it's 50% of monthly remuneration for employees earning below 2,000 Rand a month. So the formula said it was 50% of the monthly remuneration paid plus 500 Rand. And the second, the 2,000 to 4,500 employees was 1,500 Rand. And then the last employees between 4,500 and 6,500 were calculated on the formula, which now increased to 1,500 Rand. And that's why the payroll was set up for April. And that was a note that was issued by Vasi and a team. So then they've increased this limit in the 1 May 2020 bill. And so the first group of employees below 2,000, it says that the employer can claim 50% of the monthly remuneration plus an additional 750 Rand. And for the second 12-month period, it was 25% of the monthly remuneration plus an additional 750 Rand. But now in the May 2019 May 2020 bill, they've changed it for the employees earning below 2,000 Rand to be calculated on this formula. So now it states that the employer is entitled to claim an ETI of equal to 87.5% of the monthly remuneration of that employee for that particular month. And we've done a quick calculation yesterday, and in the lowest earning, and I think if the employee earned below 1,300 Rand, it would have meant that the ETI for April was overclaimed. But overall, with the introduction of the increase to an additional 750 Rand, the overall ETI would be more. And as far as I understand in the payroll, that will be corrected. Was is it in May or does it backdate to April?
It backdates to April, Harvey.
Okay. So there will be an additional amount claimed in for the April payroll period. Am I right?
Yes. So all the retro adjustments will be done. It'll go back to April and recalculate based on the new amended revised legislation.
Okay. All right. So this is a calculation for what I call the category A employees. So that was the old employees who qualified for the ETI. So that there's an additional 750 rand available in the next year, in the second 12 months period as well. So that's in that last column. So on the next slide, so all employees who previously qualified and who are over the 24 months period, and all other employees who have not qualified previously, the employers can claim an ETI of a maximum of 750 rand for those employees during this 4 months period. And so employees between 2,000 and 4,500 will get the maximum, and the lower you go or the higher above 4,500 until 6,500 will get a reduced ETI. But it should also be taken into account if the employee worked less than 160 hours, these amounts would be pro rata for the number of hours that the employee actually worked during that month. Okay, boss, you can continue. Okay, so currently employees or any taxpayer make a donation to an approved public benefit organization is allowed to claim a tax deduction up to 10% of taxable income before this donation. With the introduction of the Solidarity Fund, and there were a lot of queries, and as you can remember, a lot of the executives of the big companies committed to donating 33% or 30% of their salaries to the Solidarity Fund. And at that point, I think Avasi received a lot of queries from clients to ask how this should be treated in the payroll. And at that point in time, we haven't, or the other bills weren't issued yet, so we tried to get a solution, and we said no, but we allow it on a year-to-date basis so that you ensure that the executive gets a maximum benefit of the donation made, and that they're not totally out of pocket during or in the payroll. SARS doesn't 100% agree with that, although it's still debatable. But at least then they've introduced the legislation which allows increased deduction in the payroll, which is addressed in the in the next slide. But just to make it clear, so originally on the 1st of May draft bill, the donations only apply to any donations or payments made or property transferred on or after 1 April, but before 31 July. So it was only for a 4-month period. So now in the latest bill, they've increased that to, and so for individuals only, or people other than, or persons other than trust or companies can make donations up to 30 September. And if you go to the next slide, Avasi. Okay, so as I briefly said before, so under normal circumstances, employers can allow 5% of the donations made to any PBO or qualifying PBO in the payroll. So now with these additional donations, or now they can allow an additional amount or additional percentage of 33% of the remuneration over a 3-month period, or 16.6% over a 6-month period, to allow for any deductions that or donations that employees would want to make during this period. So if the 3-month period is elected by the employee, so it's going to be in that 4 months period, 1 April to 31 July. So I would assume that it's either April, May and June, or May, June and July. And where the employee elect to make the contribution or the donations over a 6 months period, the 16.67% limit is for those the full 6 months period. So everything that exceeds 33% or the 16% cannot be claimed in the payroll, and that would only be allowed on assessment, unfortunately. So employers must just need to be on the lookout for that. Okay, and the next slide, Devasi. Okay, and then this skills development levy holiday, which I've also introduced in the 1 May draft bill, where it was mentioned that employers don't have to pay the skills development levy from 1 May to end of August. So I think the SAP payroll is now set up that it won't calculate SDL for that period. And SARS has also advised that the SDL liability on the EMP 201 would be grayed out, so it would automatically default to 0. And that's a permanent holiday, so nothing's going to be due after that. So it's a small break for employers. And then what we've also mentioned before, the payments made by the COVID-19 disaster relief organizations to employees of SMMEs won't be subject to employees tax. But it will be taxable on assessment. And it's also only applicable for the period 1 April to 31 July. Boss, if you can go to the next page on the BRS, and you've briefly explained or touched on it. So SARS in the latest BRS, they've introduced the code 3724 code, which is used for, according to the description, the COVID-19 TERS allowance, which is taxable, but it's not subject to employees tax. And I think that's where the confusion came about, because the TERS relief is specifically applicable to the payments received from the UIF. And PAXA confirms that SARS said that was an error on the description. So it shouldn't refer to the TERS allowance, and most probably it should be, or it should refer to the amounts received from the COVID-19 relief organizations. So I'm sure that would be rectified on the revised BRS. And but I still have my doubts whether the TERS amount should be exempt. I think they still require another change in legislation, because any amount received as a benefit in terms of the Unemployment Insurance Act is exempt from tax in terms of Section 10(1) of the Income Tax Act. But they've changed so many things to the way in which the TERS benefit is calculated. I cannot see that it's, although it's paid by the Unemployment Insurance Fund, I cannot see that it's an amount determined in terms of the Act. So hopefully they can give us clarity on that, but we would assume that those amounts should be tax-free in the hands of the recipients. And then SARS has also introduced a code 4055 for the donations made to the Solidarity Fund. So normally any donations to a PBO or qualifying PBO is reported under code 4030, so that would still be reflected separately on the RP5. So the 4055 would only apply to donations made to the Solidarity Fund. And I think that is all from my side, and we can now deal with any questions. If there are any questions, I haven't looked at the comments, so.
Sorry,
Tracy, can I ask you to take care of the chat and the questions?
Certainly. For now, there are no questions, but I think, was it Johan who had a question?
Yes, sorry, I wasn't aware that I have to type it in. I was slightly late because a previous meeting ran over. My apologies for that.
No problem.
The only question I have, it's more towards Urvazi. Urvazi, our systems are experiencing that the hours are still prorating in this period. We have employees that's working 110 hours, earning a qualifying amount for that 110 hours. And the ETI calculation then prorates it up to 160 hours, which then pushes them out of the qualifying over 6,500. I understand from Harbury that during this 4-month period, that should not be happening.
The 3 months period from May till
From
July.
May.
May, yes.
Okay, sorry. I looked at April. Let me confirm.
So Johan, you are correct. This particular change was part of the revised draft bill. It was not in the original one where the 500 Rand increase was introduced. So we had not implemented this because it was not part of the first bill. It will be included in the next note that we will release that is absolutely up to date with the 750, and that will include this as well as the date of commencement. I'm a little bit apprehensive. I think, Harbury, maybe if you can guide the way, whether it's safe to actually release that note based on this second revised bill on the 19th of May, or if we're anticipating any further changes at the end of the month. So Johan, you're right, that change is not in. What you're seeing is
Okay,
you're not going to see.
Not a problem. I'm waiting anticipation for the new note. Thank you.
Okay. Harbury,
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
It's difficult for me to say because it's different times at the moment. I would say that you can introduce it, and that's the reason why National Treasury has issued that second revised bill on Tuesday. I would say that you can go ahead and do the change because it's definitely not going to be enacted before the end of before end of July. So,
Vasi, from our point of view, our company did expect us to use the 750 and the new percentages. So, and what we had to do was we did just manually updated it as a customization change in the report, and we're waiting for the SAP note to rectify that and then reverse our changes again. The only thing that we haven't done was the proration hours, which I will wait for the note. So
I'm happy, and I'm sorry, Johan, go on.
So from, I believe from business point of view, I don't know if other customers and business users are on the line that can support this, but yes, we are expecting the 750 new percentage changes in the system already. From our point of view.
I think we're going to take that position to pilot release the note and then subsequently release it with the disclaimer that this is based on a draft bill and is subject to amendment. My only concern is that if I had the certainty that SARS will expand and never contract, it's an easier decision to make. There may be a chance that they may contract on certain parts of the formulae, like we experienced with earners below 2,000 Rand. So customers need to be aware that there may be contractions here and expansions there. The overall effect might be materially not a problem, or it might be slightly a problem, but it's beyond our control. This is where the complexity and chaos comes in. So we will release a note with a disclaimer that these legal changes are or may be subject to a further change.
And Johan, if I may ask, how many employees are there, and anybody else as well that earn below 2,000 Rand?
We have quite a few thousand, so it's a big impact for us.
Okay.
Urvazi, you guys are welcome to use us for a pilot site, please.
I will. Thank you.
And going forward, Urvazi, ETI is a very big part of our life. So if you want to use us as pilot sites going forward, please accept that I've made ourselves available.
Lovely. Thank you, Johan.
Sure.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Tracy?
I am here. There are
there any
no
other
other
questions?
questions. Janine had asked one, but then Joan very graciously, Joan and Vanessa assisted her. So by the looks of it, there are no further questions with regards to both your presentations. So it is 5 to 10.
Do you want to
5
just
to 11?
check if, can you get I don't know, by raise of hand, whether we go for 10 or 15 minutes? I don't know if people, maybe because it's a more relaxed environment, they don't need a long break.
Yeah,
And
maybe
there
even
isn't really
5
this virtual
minutes.
coffee.
Yeah. Let's see what comes up on the chat line. Whoever comes through first wins a prize. Go for it. 10 minutes, 5-minute break. Heike wins. Well done, Heike. 10 minutes is fine with everyone? Looks like it. Avasi, shall we do 10 minutes?
I hope it's a nice
Lovely.
prize.
Surprise, surprise.
So that's 10 past 11, 10 past, yeah, 10 past 11. Yeah, Tracy?
Perfect. Let's do 10 past 11, everyone. Please go grab a coffee, relax, and we will see you all back at 11:10, so 10 past 11. But please do come back.
Thank you. Thanks, Tracy. We will resume at 10 past 11.
In this digital age, businesses around the world are going global. Languages, legal systems, and the way of working vary from nation to nation, and to succeed globally, businesses need to adapt to local needs. SAP Globalization Services aims to bridge the gap by providing multi-language capabilities, enabling legal compliance for customers, and delivering local best practices for SAP solutions. Our mission? To empower all businesses to run compliant locally and compete globally. For more than 40 years, we've been serving the localization needs of our customers by having a dedicated team distributed around the globe. With an extensive global network of customers, partners, and employees, we help SAP make the world run better and improve people's lives. This is SAP Globalization Services. Local solutions, global success.
Your business runs in a global and increasingly complex digital economy. Intelligent digital enterprises know this and are simplifying and integrating IT to be more agile, connected, and efficient across their business, even in how they handle tax compliance. Instead of maintaining redundant tax data and calculation functions in your SAP, non-SAP, and partner tax systems, you can connect once with a single trusted cloud tax service. This independent, easily consumed, global-ready tax engine runs on SAP Cloud Platform, digitalizing the determination and calculation of indirect taxes on business transactions by integrating multiple SAP solutions, non-SAP solutions, and even partner tax engines. Enjoy one calculation engine for consistent tax results. Adapt to rapidly changing tax regulations around the world without worrying about the details, such as keeping tax content up to date. Choose and use the vendor technology that's best for each geography and line of business, and expand into new markets with speed, agility, and confidence. Are you ready to simplify and automate indirect tax compliance? Find out more at sap.com.
Tracy,
Hi, Avasi.
do you see my screen?
I can see your screen perfectly.
Lovely, lovely. It's 10 past. I'm going to just check if we can proceed.
I think we can. You want to just give it another minute?
Absolutely.
And then, yeah, let's get going.
That coffee looked delicious.
It's actually evil to display those biscuits and chocolates there, which we don't have.
It's the best we could do.
just have you know.
Okay, Avasi, I think we can start. Let's get going.
Okay. Yeah, so I hope you all enjoyed that lovely coffee break and enjoyed our delicious coffee and cookies that we so graciously prepared for you. The last stretch of our event is going to be our development team from Bangalore, who are going to present you with the SAP notes and system changes for legal changes as well as enhancements. So I hand it over to Tarun and the team in Bangalore.
Yeah, thanks, Urvashi. So I thank you for keep giving good base in terms of functional requirements what we have got from the DMTR. Um, so let me introduce my team. Pratik, Kavya, and Anurag are the team who actually works on the technical side, who probably are also in contact with you through incidents or calls, and they will be taking you through the different topics. Um, and I'm glad even Neetu, the area product owner who also handles South Africa and other countries like you and even she's the lead for SuccessFactors Employee Central Payroll is also in the call. So we'll start with Pratik, and then maybe you can share the agenda slide, Urvasi. So Pratik will be taking you through the foreign income tax exemptions, which we have delivered, and the new operations. And then we will go into the COVID-related developments. So I will be taking you through the solidarity fund and temporary relief allowance. And then we'll go in detail with the employee ETI extension, which Khabri explained. We would be explaining you what we have delivered already and what we will be delivering next. The next note, which is still a draft, and hopefully it will not change. So we would be at least explaining what are the changes which will be what you can expect upon the changes which we already done. And then we'll go into the other legal changes, like the changes which we have done for UIF and the BRS changes. And the big one is one change which we did for is the variable pay enablement for standby allowance. So you're welcome to ask any implementation level questions are also there. And then we'll end with some miscellaneous notes, other small changes which we did around COIDA, constant change, and the interest rate changes. So over to Pratik.
Hi everyone. I'll be taking you through the foreign employment income tax changes that we delivered. So as you must be aware that from 1st of March 2020, that is the current tax year, can you go to the next slide? So the income earned, the foreign income earned is taxable once it crosses 1.25 million rands.
Pratik, sorry.
Yeah.
Can I just interrupt for a minute? I think, can I just ask everybody to make sure that their microphones are mute? My apologies, I think it is causing some interference and that your videos are switched off. Thank you. You may proceed, Pratik.
Yeah, so can we go to the next slide? The next slide. Yeah, so income that exceeds 1.25 million rands is taxable from the current tax year. So what we've done is we already had a checkbox in info type 149 for to tell I mean the master data that the period of the record is a foreign income period. So that we have built on that solution. So the next slide. So to cater to the this change, we've delivered new wage types. So one of them is /FEE. Somebody's mic is on.
Sorry, Pratik. Sorry to interrupt. Someone has their mic on. Can they please mute? Thank you.
Yeah. So one wage type is /FEE, which in the RT stores the exemption that is available to an employee in a particular period. So it will start at 1.25 million rands, and as the payroll continues through the year, the reduced amount will be stored. And the other wage type is /FIE, which holds the actual exemption that was calculated in a payroll period. And we needed another wage type which also stores the uh, taxable earning before applying the exemption. So this is read in the new function. So in the next slide, we'll see, yeah, so we've delivered a new function WFEXM, which basically generates these three wage types that we discussed. Okay, so this function is called in the schema under a check of if function that we'll discuss in the next slide. What this function basically does is, just go back to the previous slide also. Yeah, so what this function does is it looks at the info type 149 record, the tax info type, and looks for the periods that are foreign income periods. So for example, between in the current tax year, let's say 2021, if records exist between March and April, let's say. So if a record exists for March and April as foreign income period, this period will be considered as foreign income period in this function. And it looks at the entire tax year. So it looks at the records between March and March 2020 and Feb 2021. So it looks at all the records and determines the number of foreign income periods. And after that, it projects the taxable earnings for those particular periods. So let's say there were 6 months of foreign income period. So the taxable amount will be projected to those 6 months, and the exemption will be calculated and distributed or prorated accordingly for each period. And the next slide over here. So as I mentioned, there is a new parameter delivered for the function if, which is FOEX. Sorry. Yeah, just go ahead.
Pratik, let me just appeal again. I think somebody still has their microphone on because we're getting a lot of interference and it sounds like it's from the atmosphere, wind or something. So please, everybody, it's very difficult to hear Pratik if there's interference on the line. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, I was saying we have delivered a new parameter for the function if, which is FOEX. So The rules and functions specific to foreign income calculations are or can be called within this function. And we've also created a new PCR WFXM, which reduces the taxable income /106 and /107 by the exemption that is calculated by the payroll function. So this is what we've delivered as part of the standard solution. In the next slide, Urvashi, so we've just added the note number with which this was delivered. Yeah. So apart from that, we also delivered a new payroll operation called WCRTD. The next slide was. So this was a request from one of our customers who had a scenario where they needed to clear some of the wage types in the CRT, especially for the loan scenario, I believe. So we didn't have any operation in the standard payroll, so we have created this payroll operation, but we have not used this in any of our standard schemas. This is just delivered for the customers if they wish to use it. And this was delivered through a note in the next slide. Yeah. Yeah. So that's it from me. Was
Okay, so any questions, or we can move on to the next topic?
Hi there, it's Tracy here from AVSUG. So far, no one's written anything in the chat line. So let's move on to the next. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you. Just one discussion, that operation which Prateek just mentioned, it's actually a tricky one because it can clear CRT, which we don't actually recommend to use, so that's why we have not used it in any of our rules also. So it's customer's discretion that when they use it and they use it responsibly. Okay. So moving on to the COVID-19 related changes, solitary fund donations and temporary relief. Sorry about this slide. I don't know why it's showing in this way. We have corrected it 3 times. But like Khabri mentioned, there is a new fund which has been created, the solidarity fund, and any contributions which the employee makes is sub can be exempted from tax up to 33% or 16% based on the duration of which the contribution or the donation is made, 3 months and 6 months respectively. So what we have done is we've provided a wage type which can be captured through Info 15, where the employee's donation donation amount can be captured, and along with the amount, the percentage of the exemption that needs to be applied on this. So the percentage which is applied is on the taxable income, the total taxable income of the employee at that particular point. So when the donation is getting processed, if the employee is earning 100,000, then a maximum of 33.3% of 100,000, that is 33,333, is what he can get exemption of, or the donation amount, whichever is lower. So if he's making 20,000 and the total exemption amount which is allowed is 33.3% of 100,000, then he would be only getting the exemption which is 20,000. So the exemption of percentage which needs to be applied on the taxable income needs to be captured in the number field, which is in the diagram where I've captured 33.3%. A recommendation from our side is that we have provided one wage type, which is MSOL. I would suggest that customers copy this into two custom wage types. one for 33.3% and one for 16.6%, so that there can be a validation which can be applied and there can be a limit applied on the number field to be captured. Because if we leave that field for end user to capture any number, then they, by mistake, they can capture maybe 10% or 15% or any other number apart from what is allowed, which is 16.6% or 33%. So this amount actually gets accumulated into the N78 wage type, which based on which the exemptions amount gets calculated, which gets stored in the wage type LSO. But what gets reported on 4055 in IRP5 is the N78 amount, which is the donation amount and not the exemption part. Maybe the next slide. So in the next slide, like I mentioned earlier, it's expected that you have two wage types. One is for 16.6% and one is for 33%. And how you ensure that they capture only 33.3% is you configure this minimum number and the maximum number, which is 33.3. In that case, the end user will not be able to capture any other number in that field, so that there is no room for any error, a manual error. And similarly, in the other wage type, you could configure this minimum and maximum number as 16.6 for a wage type, which would be a donation wage type for 6 months. And eventually, both these wage type will go into /N78, and the exemptions would be calculated according to this percentage and get reported the same way how your standard wage type MSOL is getting reported. Okay, so yeah, the next slide. So the payroll changes is basically your /LSO is the wage type which you create, which has the donation exemption amount. This amount is going to be the lower of 33% or 16% of the taxable income or the donation amount. So it will be lower of these two. And that is what we calculate. And then N78 is something which we convert into positive. So donation, since is a negative amount, it's a deduction. We convert it into positive before we store it into the SCRT, so that the positive amount is reported on the IRP5. So, and these changes are delivered through the note, which is mentioned in the next slide. Okay, sorry. So before I go into the note number, along with this changes, we have delivered the temporary relief scheme allowance changes as well. So like Khabri mentioned in his presentation, there's a new SARS code 3724, which needs to be reported with the allowance or the benefits which the employee is getting from the temporary relief scheme. And apparently it is not the same as the one which is for UIF. There's a typo or there's an error in the BRS change. Hence, we have just kept its name as COVID-19 temporary relief scheme. So any benefits that the employer is getting, which needs to be taxed at assessment, and it is not taxed actually. It is not part of the remuneration, and hence not taxed in the payroll. This amount gets taxed only at assessment. So this is this wage type is only created, captured, and created in the cluster just for reporting purpose. And both these changes are delivered through this note 2919619. Yeah. Okay. So moving on to ETI, over to you, Anurag. Anurag?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Greetings from the SAP development team. and I'm a presenter for the ETI tax incentive extension part. So I will present to you the system changes which we delivered in the phase 1 and what we have already did in the system in during the phase 2 thing. So Urvashi, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, here. So why we call it as a phase 1 is this is based on the DMTR bill, the initial one when we released it. And later, as Kabri said, there were multiple versions came up, and to identify those changes, we just give a name called phase 1, phase 2. So phase 1 is already delivered, like Kabri and Urvashi already mentioned about the 500 Rand extra ETI one. So that I will explain right now, and later, just next, I will explain you the phase 2 thing. So during the phase 1, as you already know that there are multiple category added to the employees qualified scheme. So I will take you through the employees who are actually qualified during the ETI COVID-19 phase 1. So as you can see, the employees who works in a non-SEZ and has already reached 24 times, has reached the 24 counts of ETI months. That is the first one. Second one is the non-SEZ employee who didn't claim 24 months. Those are the regular employee. And third one is the employee who works in a non-SEZ platform, in a personal area or sub area. There, the employee who has an age between 30 to 65 range. So these three are belongs to non-SEZ. Same thing applicable for SEZ as well. So I just segregated all the points here so that it will be clear to all. So what we have already covered. So and please make a note that the other related criterias to make eligible to make an eligible employee for ETI, those are still in place, like the RSA ID, the wage, and the date of commencement, like the hiring date. That was the phase 1 changes. So the check related to the employment date was still there in the system. Whoever joined before the date will not be eligible during the phase 1 ETI expansion. And I have created a table where I can show you, as you can see here, these all three segments and has three slab rates. So first one is the below 2001, second one is the below 4,500. This is slab 2. First one is the slab 1, and third one is the slab 3. So I just mentioned additional ETI, just make it a point on, just note it that it is only I'm talking about the additional ETA that they can claim. So we'll just go to the previous slide once. Yeah, so additional ETA, I can tell you, if I mention 500 Rand, that is that additional ETA of 500 Rand can be claimed for this particular employee set who works who has not reached 24 months of ETA count. Sorry. And for the second one, the employee who already claimed 24 months of ETI. So there you can see the 500 Rand for below 2000 and 4,500, that is 500 Rand, the same. And when you apply the formula, it is up to 500. So there is no fixed 500, they will get an additional ETI. It's based on the formula. It can go to 0, it can go to 500 maximum. So that is the reason I mentioned up to 500 additional ETA they can claim. So similarly, the third one, the ETA age one, it is exactly same like the second sector, the second portion which I just mentioned. So can we go to the next slide? So this is the note number for the ETI COVID-19 tax measure phase 1 change. And this is already available, and I guess most of you already have this change. And as soon as I explain the ETI phase 2, then I will take a Q&A for this. So I hope phase 2 is clear right now, as Kabri and Urvashi mentioned in detail about what the changes are. And these all changes are, I'll just take you from a system point of view, how we are doing it. So as I already told you in the phase 1, the qualifying criteria are all same. Only one new category has been introduced. The only new category which you can see here, that is the date of employment. Any employee who joined prior to previously 1st October 2013, all of them will be eligible. For only this 4 months, that is April, May, June, July, 1st of April 2020 to 31st of July 2020. And the next slide, please, Roshi. Yeah, here I'll talk you through the remuneration part, what we are doing in respect to the employee's remuneration, which is used to determine the employee's ETI. So as you already aware by Kabri, that from 1st of May 2020 to 31st of July 2020 will not project that remuneration. So any employee who works less than 160 hours will those employees remuneration will not project it to 160 hours. But there is as soon as okay, let me put this in this way. The remuneration will use the actual remuneration. It's not the projected remuneration for this 3 months, but the ETI, which will be calculated based on the actual remuneration, that will be prorated based on the factors of employees' work schedule. Next slide, please, Urushi. So this is something which is pretty much similar to Kabri. So here I have given you the idea of the remuneration and which formula and what is the calculation method that we are using to determine the ETI. So as you can see, the first line there, 0 to 2000 employees remuneration, we are using 87.5% of monthly remuneration. So it is a percentage right now. And from 2001, 2000.01 to 4500, it is fixed 1750 Rand for the first 12 months of employee I'm talking about right now. Then I'll, as you can see, the second set is already mentioned here. And the third one is the new category which is added. That is the age one and the employee who already qualified for 24 months and the employee who joined previously to 1st of October 2013. So the last lab is basically 4500. Here I have mentioned all the factors, the formula and all. Based on this, the ETI will be calculated. And I'll quickly go to the next slide. Urvashi, can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So here I have, sorry, Urvashi, the previous slide. Yeah, here I have mentioned similarly the phase 1, which I have given you an idea. These 3 types of employees are there, sets who are qualified for ETI right now, and the additional ETI, how much they can claim. So, and please make a note here, I am talking about the additional ETI. So additional ETI for the person who works, who didn't complete 24 months of ETI count, for them, if their remuneration is 2000, then as it is based on a particular percentage, then an employee can claim up to 750 rand. And below 4,500, it is fixed 7,500. And below 6,500, as it is based on a formula that I showed you in the previous slide, it will be up to 750 rand. Similarly, the second set of calculation and the third set of calculation will follow. So skills development levy, SDL holiday, like Abri mentioned that there is, can we go to the next slide? Yeah, here we just stopped the calculation of SDL for starting from 1st May 2020, which ends in 31st of August 2020. So there will be no SDL calculation in our payroll system, and for which the note number is this you can refer to. Yeah. Here I will talk you through the new employment status respective unemployment insurance fund. Next slide, please, Urvashi. Yeah. The new, as you can see, the gadget number 42821. According to that, 3 new employment status code has been introduced in the UIF. That is code 17, 18, and 19. 17 is reduced working time. 18 is commissioning parental, and 19 is parental. So these 3 has been introduced in our system to get UIF related new changes. So we can go to the next slide. Yeah, here I'll talk you through the system configuration perspective, how we are doing it. So the code 18, which is commissioning parental, and code 19, which is parental, those are specifically a leave type associated to a leave type. So customer have to maintain the particular leave type in SAP maintenance view v_t5w4s. There they have to create an entry for their particular leave type for commissioning parental and parental for their personal sub-area grouping and the leave type which they have created with the proper code which we have already mentioned in the note number. As soon as that is maintained, our UIF report will pick that up based on the absence settings of that employee in the payroll, and it will start picking the correct employment status code during the UIF run. And I'll talk in brief about the code 17. Code 17, that is reduced working hours. So it works in both ways. Both ways in the sense, an employer can choose to use it based on the leave configuration or based on the action type. So if you want to use it based on the leave configuration, the thing which I just mentioned, that you have to configure your leave type and your code 17 in this particular maintenance view v_t5w4s. As soon as you maintain it based on the employee's absences in the AB table in the payroll, it will start peeking the data and it will show the correct value in the generation report. If you want to use it based on your action, so there is a view which is v_5w31_UIF. There you just have to create a record based on your action type and a reason with the code 17. So as soon as that is created, the system will pick the correct code based on the employee's info type 0 record, that is action. The note which we have released for it is 2909013. You can refer to it for the more details. So that was from my side. Any questions from you?
We do have a few questions. Do you want to answer them now, or shall we wait till the end? Are you happy to answer some now?
Yeah, sure.
From Vanessa, she wants to know, how is the additional 5% exemption for donations added to the current donation exemption amount?
For that, I will redirect the question to Tarun.
Yeah.
Tarun?
So basically, there is no change in the donations functionality. So whatever we have discussed is an additional add-on exemption which an employee can get in case the employee makes a donation to solidarity fund contribution. So for donations to get 5% exemption, there's already a different model wage type MDON, which can be used and which will be an additional. That will be an additional amount which will get added to the exemption. So that will generate a different wage type called LDO/LDO, which will be 5% of the maximum 5% of taxable income. And then there is LSO, which is the 33 or 16% of the taxable income if it is a contribution to the solidarity fund. Any other funds, 5% is still applicable, and it works the way it was working earlier.
Okay, great. Then another question from Johan van Niekerk. He writes here, note 29.10.89 had a version 4 released with the description extended correction instruction validity, no change to functionality. What does this mean? Do we need to implement it over version 3?
I'll take over this. There is no change in the functionality as it is written in the note text. Only we have maintained few other SP releases to make available this note for few customers. So there is no change in the functionality. So if you have already have the version 3, you don't have to apply the version 4.
Okay, great. Then one final question from Karen. Does the absence that is linked to reduced working hours have to be set up in time as an unpaid absence?
I would like to know the background of it a bit more. How their reduced working hours works. Like, is it a absence configured one, or is it based on action? So what is the business process behind it?
It's an absence.
If it is an absence, if they want to, if there is a pay cut, or if as the name said, reduce working hours, if there is a salary cut because of that, and which they want to take it from the UIF authority, then in such cases, they have to make it unpaid during the time configuration, and they have to, as soon as the payroll deducts the money, and our system, our UIF program will read the status, and it will generate the code 17. If there is no pay cut, there is only reduced working hours they want to use without unpaid absences have any role in that, then they can just go and create that particular absence action type and region in the table. Based on that, it will pick.
So Anurag, I can just assist a little. So Karan, you're right. If you are going to use it as an unpaid hours to reduce the hours, that's a business choice. If you wish to do it through a work schedule and you want to link it to an action, that's a business choice. Or if you do it through an action and you reduce his basic pay, I'm not sure how customers wish to do the reduced hours, but all we're doing is we're enabling it such that the system will look at if it's a leave, if there's an unpaid leave for reduced hours, then we need to report that correct UIF code so that the UIF authorities know that that this employee is eligible for compensation. If it's an action that it was done through, then we make sure that we read it and we provide that report, that code onto the UIF download report. And yes, the unpaid leave will be a leave configuration for business.
We don't want it to be an action, so it's already set up as an absence. But because this change has only come out this week, it wasn't available previously. We didn't want it. It hasn't got any effect on the payroll. They've got a different method of reducing the hours in the payroll. But now I've tried it and it doesn't work because it's not set up as unpaid. So I'll just log a SAP OSS and then we can take this offline.
Brilliant. We can then, yeah, we can have a look and see what we can do to assist.
Thanks.
Hi guys, a couple of more questions. Esther would like to know, can you please repeat the note number for the SDL holiday period?
Yeah.
It's on the screen. If my screen's blocking, I'm sorry. Yeah.
And then while that's on the screen, we have another question. Do we have to make, it's from Johan, do we have to, wait, I'm losing this. Wait. Johan, do we have to make use of the action reason method to have the UIF report to pick this up during generation? We use an unpaid leave type for short time?
That's fine. If you're using the unpaid leave type copied from our if there's an unpaid leave, it will read it as and put it into that particular UIF code, correct?
Yeah, for that they have to configure the in the table which I have mentioned. Yeah.
Let me just take you to the table. Is it?
Yeah.
Is it on this here?
You have to go for no. You have to go next to the sheet. Yeah.
Okay, I hear you.
Yeah, there is a maintenance view present for customer for this. The view is v_t5w4s. They have to link the absence type to the UIF reason code there.
I just want to mention one thing. This absence type should be on the last day of the month, as in the employee should be on this particular absence on the last day of the month, because the code 8280 is reported based on the last day of the month. And probably that's why in the previous incident where Karen was facing an issue, I think that could be one reason. If the absence was not captured on the last day of the month, the code was not reported.
Thanks, guys. That's all the questions in the chat line.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I will hand over to Kavya, our colleague, to take you through the further topics. Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Kavya Pasla and I'll be taking you through the standby or shift allowance changes and the changes related to BRS for tax year 2021.
Sorry, Kavya, we're not hearing you very clearly. Can you speak a little louder? And I just want to double check that everyone's muted, Tracy.
Everyone is?
Kavya, then maybe if you can just, I'm not sure there's background noise, but there's a lot of hissy sounds in the background, yeah.
Sorry, is it better now?
A little better, but if you can go a little louder, that'll be nice. Thank you, Kavya.
Yes. Hello everyone, this is Kavya Pasla and I'll be taking you through the changes related to standby or shift allowance and the BRS changes for tax year 2021. Could you please go to the next slide, Urvashi? So we have a new legal change saying that from this tax year, the standby or shift allowances should be taxed and reported when they are actually paid to the employees instead of when they are earned. To cater to this change, we've included the standby or shift allowance in the variable pay solution. These allowances will be reported under SARS code 3713 as other allowances. Could you please go to the next slide, Urvashi? So we have created a new model wage type for standby or shift allowance, that is M123. And we've also created 4 other wage types to align it with the variable pay solution, where you have a base, super, outflow, and inflow wage types. So base wage type will have the amount that you've actually paid to the employee in a particular payroll period. And let us say you've retroactively paid an allowance to an employee. You'll have that money flowing into the current payroll period from the previous payroll period. This particular amount in the previous payroll period will be stored as an outflow amount, and in the current payroll period, it will become an inflow amount. And super wage type will have the sum of the base and outflow wage types or the inflow wage type. And here is an example. Let us say you paid an employee an allowance of 1,000 rands in the month of March. In the March payroll period, your M123 will have 1,000 rands. That is the record you've created. And BSA will have 1,000 rands because that is what you paid the employee in this particular payroll period. And the super wage type will also have 1,000 rands because you haven't made any further changes. And in the month of April, you've retroactively changed this amount to 1,500 rands. So when the retro runs for the month of March in April, your BSA will still have 1,000 rands because that is still the amount that is paid to the employee in the month of March. And this difference, the 500 rands you've increased, it will become as an outflow for the month of March and an inflow for the month of April. And super wage type for the month of March in April will have 1,500 rands. That will be the sum of your base and your outflow wage types. And in the month of April, you'll have this inflow wage type for the 500 rands, and your base and the super wage types will again be 500 rands each. Could you please go to the next slide, Urvashi? So let us say you already have custom wage types for your shift or standby allowances. What you can do is you can change the begin date of your variable pay solution activation date. That is a start date in the table VT5WRTW, and you can make it 30/12/1999. Sorry, 9999. It will deactivate the solution, and then you can change the processing class specification of your custom wage types to 1. Also, please cross-check your custom wage type configuration with M123 to make sure that it is aligned with standard. And then you need to execute a live payroll run for from the beginning of the tax year. This will generate the base and the super wage types for all these previous payroll periods. If you do not do this step, system will have no way of knowing that this amount is already accounted for. It will assume that you've retroactively paid this employee. So it will pretty much generate outflow wage types for all these previous payroll periods and flow these amounts into your current payroll period. So these amounts will again be processed. So please make sure that you deactivate your variable pay solution and run a live retro. After that, you can go back and activate the variable pay solution by changing the start date to the beginning of this tax year. Please go to the next slide, Urvashi. So if you do not have custom wage types in place, what you can do is you can implement the SAP note, copy M123 into a custom wage type, and run payroll for all the previous payroll periods if you want to retroactively pay any employees, and then activate the solution from the beginning of the payroll month from which you want to activate the solution. Like if you want to implement the standby or shift element solution from the beginning of June, you can set the start date as 1/6/2020. Please go to the next slide, Urvashi. So this is the note number for the variable pay or shift allowances, and these are the support packages in which this change is included. If you have any questions, we can take them.
Hi, everyone. There is one question, but I think it's to do with the previous presentation. It's from Farmer. Just wants to know, will the leave type configuration retro back to March?
Anurag, can you please take this one?
I can take actually. In case you're capturing this leave and you have created a new leave and you're capturing this leave in the master data, then a retro will get triggered. However, on configuration of the table, ideally there should not be a retro change because this table is more related to the report. So there will not be any impact on the payroll. Unless you are capturing this leave in the master data for March and then running the retro, there should not be an impact retrospectively. And if you choose to go and change the master data and capture this unpaid leave from March onwards, that would ideally mean that you would probably have to report the UIF retrospectively for March and April and even May if you're doing it. So changing the master data and capturing these leaves in retrospectively will lead to even retrospective refiling of UIF. Does that answer your question?
Perfect. I hope so. There are no other further questions in the meeting chat line, so we can move on to the next.
Roasi, can you please go to the next slide? So we have 3 new SARS codes for this tax year. They are 4055, which is related to COVID-19 donation. This is the Solidarity Fund related SARS code. And we have 3724, which is for the employee temporary relief allowance. And apart from that, we have 4587, which is the foreign income tax exemption, which was discussed in the previous slides. Urvashi, could you please go to them? Apart from that, we have some changes related to ETI SARS codes, and one of them is on SARS code 7003, which is the ETI minimum wage. If you have a wage regulating measure in place, the higher of this wage regulating measure or the national minimum wage should be reported under SARS code 7003. So for this purpose, we've created a new wage type /EMW, which will capture the higher of the wage regulating measure or the national minimum wage. And also, please make sure you run a retro from the beginning of the tax year to create /EMW for all your previous payroll periods. We also have a new validation in place saying that SARS code 7003 and 7008 should have the same wage rate. So if your minimum wage is paid as, if your minimum wage is reported as hourly, weekly, or monthly, then the wage paid should also be reported as hourly, weekly, or monthly. If we are reporting 20 rands under SARS code 7003, the wage paid should also be an hourly rate. Urvashi, can you please go to the next slide? So we also have another change related to SARS code 7005, which is the ETI qualifying 12-month cycle indicator. Previously, we only had indicators 1 and 2, where 1 is for the first 12 months and 2 is for the next 12 months. Now we have a new indicator 3 that is for employees who qualify for the additional ETI because of COVID-19. And this is only valid for the months of April, May, June, and July. Apart from that, we've also made a few text and validation changes related to these SARS codes. And 2900221 is the SAP note we've released for VRS version 1. And we are currently working on the second note 29221512. This note will be released soon. If you have any questions, we can take.
Nothing. There's nothing on the chat line.
Then thank you, everyone. I would like to hand over to Tarun for closing remarks.
Just towards the end, we can go through the notes which we have released apart from the COVID related and the major changes which we have done. The budget changes was delivered through this note, and the new wage type for ETI, minimum wage 7003. So this is a prerequisite for your BRS changes to be applied. This will impact your payroll so that the wage type gets created, and then when you apply the BRS changes, you will be able to see the reporting of 7003 correctly. Reporting framework, this is kind of a KBA knowledge base archive because there was a requirement which we got from a customer where we were expected to deliver a report for this period where I'm sure there must be many reports which would be required to be generated during this period to identify the people who have been underpaid or are reduced hours or different kinds of data which might be required during these times. And what we observed is most of the details which are required are master data related, or there are some wage types which needs to be reported. So in this case, there was an enumeration, and then most of the details was related to the master data. So we have released this KBA, which gives the details on how the reporting framework, which was present in the last UPSAG meeting which we had in October, can be used to retrieve the data which is required to submit for the UIF TERS maybe. So if you would like to get the benefit of temporary relief scheme from UIF, and I think they have a different Excel format which mostly requires certain master data information of the employee and then the remuneration details of the employee. The reporting framework is the right tool to generate such a report. We internally even tried this, and we were able to extract almost all the details here, and also add additional validations. Going to the next slide. Apart from this, we did the change in the COIDA annual earnings threshold, which is a constant change, and then there was a change in the interest rate, which was effective from 1st of May. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining in and dialing in and taking out your time and listening to us. Hope you find the session helpful. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you. And I'm welcome for any questions. I mean, we're here to answer any questions in case there is anything.
Okay, great. Before Avasi shuts it all down, on behalf of AFSAG, we would like to thank everyone who did give up their time to join in, sit and listen. As reiterated earlier in the beginning, upon approval of the presentation and the recording, it will be shared with our community. So having said that, I'll leave the final word to Avasi.
Thanks, Tracy. I just wanted to clarify one little question that was asked, and I'm not sure if it was adequately, if the customer was adequately satisfied regarding the 5% and the 33%. Is Khabri, are you still on the line?
Yes, Rosie, I'm still on the line.
Hi, Khabri. I think somebody asked a question about how does the 5% affect the 33%. Maybe you want to just explain that the 5% and the 33% are standalone. The 33 is over and above the 5% from the legal point of view.
The 33 and the 16% is over and above the 5%. So I'm not sure if the payroll does it, but you effectively can get a 38% deduction in respect of the Solidarity Fund donations.
For that month. For that month.
Yes.
Assuming you have both. Yes, the payroll is doing that. Correct, Tyrone?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So I don't know who asked the question, but I'm just clarifying, just in the event that it may not have come across too clear from a legislation point of view.
Vanessa
I think it
from
was
APSA,
Vanessa.
if you would like to, is your question answered, Vanessa, or do you have anything to add on? Would you like more information on this?
Tarun, I've sent you an email. If you can maybe just answer me on that, I would appreciate it.
Okay, sure.
Thank
So
you.
Vanessa, if it's a system question, we're happy to do it. But if it's a legal question, then Khabri is the best person to ask now. If you want.
If I say at APSA, our donations are all for solidarity. So we've set up the donation wage type as a deduction, and it is calculating the 5% of the exemption. But according to that other rule, there's an additional 5% that needs to be added to that, and that's not happening.
There's no additional 5%. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Vanessa. Are you not using the 33%? Are you doing the 5% donation?
It's the 5% donation.
Yeah,
So the
you need to.
additional 5 happens on assessment. Sorry. Go on, Tyrone.
I'm sorry, you can continue, Vasia. I think.
I'm not sure if I understand you correctly, but the payroll does a certain percentage, and the balance of the 5% is given to the employee on assessment. Is that correct, Khabri?
Yes, that is correct. But I mean, if the donations are only to the solidarity fund, then it should be only limited to 16.6% or the 33%, whatever the case may be. Do they donate more than that, Vanessa?
No, they don't go over the 16 or the 33%.
Then you would use our new wage types to do that. You wouldn't use the 5% one. The 5% one is for any other scheme, any other fund, not the solidarity. The solidarity is distinctly the 33 and the 16, which is what we've delivered with a new note.
But sorry, Vasi, that wasn't available during the April payroll run, the 16.6%. So what's going to happen with if employees donated in April in excess of the 5%?
Then you would delete that record and recreate it, and the payroll will retrospectively run. So the payroll does all of that corrections automatically. And it'll self-correct and do the taxation, correctly. Vanessa, happy to look at your email, or even if you raise an incident after, we can take it offline. But I just thought if you were questions you wanted to get Khabri's opinion on this, would have been a better forum. But if you're satisfied, then we can do the rest of it offline.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions in the chat? Tracy?
No, just one very, very important question that I think relates to everybody who is on the call. Johan would like to know what's for lunch.
I have another virtual delicious smoking barbecue I can put onto the screen in a short while.
But other than that, no, there are no more questions. Looks all good.
Okay.
So Tracy, I'm going to close, but I want you to end with anything that you'd like to share from APSA point of view. But let me first do a closing thank you speech. What I would like though is, I'm not sure how you're going to do this, but if customers can indicate what they would like to see in the next event, because this event was very much a COVID event and there was lots of things I had planned. However, it was going to get too cluttered if we introduced other topics like the S4HANA, payroll, and SuccessFactors. So I'm hoping that after COVID is done and dusted, we can start enjoying life and looking forward to new innovation. So your suggestions to what you'd like to see going forward, will be highly appreciated from everybody who's attending this call. Okay. And okay, so yeah, in closing, I would like to thank AFSA for making this event possible. A special thank you to you, Tracy, for double hatting, and I must say to you for driving this event. You got me going. Our presenters for their contributions, to all our customers and partners for attending and participating on the chat. A particular thanks to Khabri for keeping us compliant. Thank you so much, Khabri. The development team for delivering legal changes at extremely short notice and delivering them at a decent and a very good quality. Our customers and I certainly appreciate that you were able to do this at such short notice. To all our customers and partners who also enable the SAP notes in their pilot testing, a very special thank you to you. And yeah, until our next event, which we hope to have in the next quarter 2 or 3, I want to say to all of you, please be safe, stay connected, and stay locked. Thank you all. And lunch will be served shortly.
So I think that's it. Everyone, thank you so much once again for joining. Look on our website for upcoming webinars. There are a number. There's also a mailer that went out with regards to USAG, if you're interested in that. And if you have any questions, our door is always open. Please contact us. So have a lovely afternoon, and same here. Stay warm, stay safe, stay cool. Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Stop recording.